Hey all, Farmer Jesse here, going to talk about bed flips today. In fact, I want to get really in depth on turning over beds in the no-till system. Also, with this video, I'm going to put up a post tomorrow, which I don't know when you're watching this, but over at no-tillgrowers.com, all about bed flips. So I'm going to aggregate as many bed flip videos and podcasts and stuff that I can get so that you can get a good understanding, because it's June. We're flipping lots of beds right now, going from spring crops to summer. So anyway, yeah, let's do it. All right, so first things first, if you have not checked out the Frith Farm event, it's going to be here at Rough Draft Farmstead in October. Check that out. Go to no-tillgrowers.com and click on the events tab. It'll be there. It's going to be awesome. Daniel's going to come down here, do a half day of intensive. Then the second half of the day, we're going to come here to the farm, and we're going to do a farm tour, and we're going to talk about our methods, and we're going to drink beer and talk no-till. It's going to be rad. Let's talk about bed flips. All right, so what we've got going on here, let me show you this. Few different things. All right, so these are our heirloom sweet potatoes, and this plot, if you'll remember from the winter time, was spinach. So all we did to flip these beds is we essentially mowed it, and then we threw a tarp over top of it, and that's it. That was the entirety of this bed flip. We pulled the tarp off, shoved these sweet potato slips in the ground, and also we've got some peanuts, and also some corn, sweet corn, because I want corn and peanuts. Those things are delicious. So yeah, then that's all it took. There was almost nothing to it. Now, I don't necessarily love tarping. I think that it can create some anaerobic areas, but it's really effective on a large scale like this. So this is 10 beds that we flipped without a whole lot of energy. And I like that, especially this time of year, because it's just fast for us. So that is like the most simple, basic no-till bed flip. You're just gonna pull your tarp off, add your amendments, and get your plants put in the ground. And so yeah, that's super simple. Now, I wanna talk about some more experimental ones, or perhaps a more experimental one, over here with the carrots. So we've talked about the carrots before, they're all coming out, right? But as you can see right here, we just put in the ground some butternut squash, but what you may not be able to tell is that there's also some soybean in there, and some weeds in the pathway. But let me explain what's happening here. So this bed flip, right, you think about carrots. Carrots are super simple. You pull them out and then you have a free bed, right? But I don't like leaving the bed empty for any amount of time. In no-till, you should really keep your bed planted as much as possible. So basically, the carrots came out, we cleaned it up, just kind of spot weeded it with a hoe, and then sowed, you can kind of see we sowed soybeans as a cover, because why not? Get some edamame maybe, if we want to. So we sowed soybeans as a cover, and then what we'll do is we'll let that grow up a little bit, and then we'll cultivate it all out. I think that's what we're gonna do. We may do some different things. We may trial a couple different things in here, but essentially we would leave those soybeans in there for a while to grow and sort of feed that squash while we're still pulling all these other carrots. We've still got 2 weeks left of carrots, so we'll pull a bed, and then we'll sow it to soybeans, and then I'm not worried about the weeds because I'll just come through and cultivate those out, and then let that squash grow up through there. So that's kind of a unique, different bed flip. I think with this one, you know, the garlic will be coming out next week. We'll do like a more in-depth talk about the garlic here soon, because I want to catch you all up on how the Austrian winter pea situation went, and it went really well so far. But anyway, that's all going to come out soon, and all that'll be is we'll probably do the same thing where we just throw the tarp over top for now, then pull it back, sow a cover crop, finish the cover crop, and then sow our fall carrots in there. So we'll do a big 10 bed round of storage carrots in that. So I'll talk about all that later. All right, this one's for you, Alex Eakins. This bed here, the second half of it had arugula in it. And I got a weed whacker and weed whacked the arugula out. But we've been experimenting with the weed whacker bed flip. It's not my style. I'm kind of going away from technology, but I want to try all these things for you all. And honestly, it's pretty good. Like, it's pretty, you can see in this video, you can get pretty good control of it to the point that you're just hitting that base stubble. Like, you're just cutting it off at the base. And yeah, and I mean, you leave a little bit of this kind of stuff where you may have a few, I've done this a few times with the arugula, you may get a little bit of regrowth. It's not too big of a deal and you end up cutting it out. But yeah, you can see how trashy this looks. I just left it on the surface because I didn't have time, and then we transplanted some shishitos and a little bit of basil. It's actually pretty great. Like, I'm impressed with how fast it is. It takes some work. There's definitely some nuance and some finesse that needs to take place. But the weed whacker bed flip has actually got some potentials for baby greens, especially for baby greens. Although I also used it on our kale, and that went really well too. And I've used it, let's see, I've used it on lettuce. And that works really well, just cutting the lettuce off at the base. It can be a little slow, like frustratingly slow and kind of loud, and kind of hard on your arms. So it takes a little finesse and it takes a little just getting used to, like building the muscles that required for a weed whacker. But beyond that, I'm really satisfied with how well that goes. And it's good because we're growing a lot of arugula. We have arugula here and arugula here, and flipping beds by hand with lettuce is okay. You know, it's not that big of a deal. You just cut the lettuce out and throw it in the bin. But with arugula, it's a big job. So I'm glad to have something that's a possible option for turning over a bed. And one thing I want to add, I want to make sure and emphasize that we're always leaving the roots in the ground. And the reason for that is numerous reasons. You want to, for the same reason that we're flipping the beds really quickly, is the reason that we're leaving the roots in the ground. So the roots are staying in the ground to help keep feeding those microbes. They still have exudates coming out of them. They're still feeding that microbial population. And they're just a big mass of carbon. So we want to leave that in the soil to help build our organic matter, but also just to ready the soil and keep the soil ready for the next crop. I think that's a critical part of this, is that not only are you trying to keep the soil undisturbed by not yanking it out and not pulling up weed seed, but you're also leaving all that carbon in the soil, you know, liquid carbon for the microbes and also physical carbon in the roots. And I mentioned this a minute ago, but one of the big things for us in bed turnover is that we do not want a bed to sit out of production for any amount of time. You'll lose your soil microorganisms really fast. So we try, so you in that clip in the beginning, you saw me clearing the beans, and I cleared the beans by hand. We actually do that on the second harvest. So you harvest your beans, and then the second you do one big harvest off your beans, and the second harvest you come through and actually just clip them out, unless they're a longer producer. But this was Roma bush beans, so we clip it out, and then I harvest those in the wash pack. But that leaves this bed open to plant, and so we just came through the next day and transplanted all of these beets. Cut the beans out. Then what the hell did I do? Cut the beans out, added a little bit of compost as mulch, just a little bit. We're going more low mulch than deep mulch these days. And a little bit of a fish meal. And that's it. And that was our entire bed flip. And then we just stuck the transplants in there. Yeah, no broad forking or anything like that. Super simple. I don't want to bring up any weed seed, especially not this time of year when weeds grow like crazy. I have an example of this going right now, but another thing that we've done in terms of bed flips is that, let's say you have a crop coming out like lettuce. Let's just go look at this. Let's say you have a crop like lettuce coming out. All right, so you have we have a bunch of lettuce in this plot, right? So let's say I want to clear this plot and I have transplants going in, beets or something. You basically cut your plant out, put it in the aisle, and at the same time you're pulling a tray behind you and you're just putting plants back in. So you're doing two tasks at the exact same time. So you'd be cut your plant out at the bottom and then push your transplant in next to it, and then you get your spacing, because these are all spaced, you know, at 8 inches. So then you just go between the two plants that you cut out, and there you'd get the exact same spacing. It may not be quite as pretty as the first transplanting, but I think that's got a lot of potential for being a really functional way to get crops out and then crops back in. You can see where the kale's massacred into a mulch right now. We'll clean that up and we'll actually just sow all that to carrots here shortly. There's a bunch of carrots. We'll sow all that to carrots here shortly. That's about, I mean, it's probably been out for about 2 days. That makes me nuts. Like, I hate having beds out of production. But we're so busy right now at this time of year, it's super hard to keep up with it. So like, that's something you have to think about in terms of scale, is you really don't want crops that you can't, beds that you can't flip fast. I think that's a really, I don't know, I don't think that's a really great, I think that's bad for your soil, and I think ideally you would always have something growing. And that's why in the everbed system, like, that's more in line with what I was just talking about with the lettuce, where you're constantly having something growing. And sometimes you're putting the plant in before you take the other one out. So like in the case of the lettuce, maybe you've just harvested this, you can see where the plants are, you're putting the new plant in, and then you're going through and cutting the other one out later. I don't know, I mean, I think there's a lot of potential for that. And we do a lot of that on the farm, especially in everbed. The seed, our little kale seed, is about to come out. And then what will grow up through the kale seed is our paste tomatoes. So that's gonna be pretty rad. And again, same thing here. Interplanted fennel, right, into celery. So the fennel's about to come out and the celery will grow up through it. And then in the middle of the summer, I'll put in a bunch of lettuce in that bed, and then the celery will come out and the lettuce will grow up. So that's kind of my favorite little everbed combo, is using the celery to shade the lettuce in the middle of the summer. Incorporating ingredients, I'd rather put them on the surface and then cover them with mulch than use a tilther. We trialed the tilther. If you're interested in this, I'm not interested in a tilther. I'm trying to go away from any sort of mechanization, so we don't use it, but I did want to trial it and see how deep it went for people who are interested in it. And really, we ran it at 1 inch, and it hit this, you know, we basically like set up a bed of compost. I ran it at 1 inch, and that it definitely went below 1 inch. And then I ran it at 2 inches, and it kind of got below 2 inches. And then at 3 inches, it was definitely not touching. And I was pushing it pretty hard. So, and I tested it in a couple different places, but that compost, I compacted it really heavily so it would be a little bit more like soil. And honestly, I was pretty much, I mean, if you're worried about the depth of the tilther, I would say it's not a big deal. I think that for the most part, it doesn't really, I mean, it's not going to get too far into your rhizosphere or anything. So if it's something you want to use, I mean, it's obviously like really functional for lots of growers. So I would say don't feel too guilty about it. Otherwise, you all, it's June. It's actually my day off. We're taking Tuesdays off. So I'm going to go kick it with the family. Like this video if you like this video. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. Check out no-tillgrowers.com. Like I said, I'm going to put up a whole little list of things you can watch on no-till bed flips. There's lots of different ways to do it. I've already done a no-till bed flip video. I will probably do more than this one. There's just so many ways to do it, and I'm learning a new way and a new technique every time. And it seems obvious, right? Like with a crop like beets or carrots or something that come out, you just put something else back in, but there's so much nuance to it, and there's so many different ways to do it. There's a lot of interseeding, interplanting. So we'll talk about all that going forward, but for the moment, I'm gonna go drink coffee and kick it with my kids. So, all right, we'll see y'all later.